Hi, hope everyone's doing well. Thanks for joining me. Welcome back to this series where I'll be removing and replacing, and then repairing eventually, the old motor in a Gen 1 991 GTS. So this is part 3 where I'll be hoping to install the replacement engine. Can I get it back on the road? Let's find out. Got to give you a quick update on removing this injector because I've finally got here, but what a nightmare. So I'll show you quickly. So first of all, this is the injector, what was getting more and more mashed with mole grips. I bought myself some oxygen and gas to heat the thing up, and that didn't help. Some people suggested heating the head, but obviously, you know, how are you going to do that when it's on? You know, all the heat just gets absorbed down here. Yeah, I got my little cheap extractor from Temu, which was pretty good. I don't know how they do these things for 20 quid delivered. Crazy. But unfortunately, the ends were just too big to get a grip in there. Anyway, so after heating it up, I then took the chisel to it and it started to bend out, and then finally I got the mole grips on it and it snapped, leaving a piece in there. So that's one of the broken bits off that injector too. And then I tried drilling in a little bit further and then getting this reverse tap in there, flooding it with oil, and reverse threaded stud extractor and pulling the thing out. Let me show you. It's a stud extractor, bolt extractor kit. So happy days. So I'm just giving these injectors a good clean. I've got carb cleaner here going into the injectors, and I'm operating the injectors with a little bench power supply here. You can hear the solenoid clicking in, and so it's just a case of running this carb cleaner through it like so. So I'm just going from all like that, one at a time. And this little Heath Robinson device here, I've just made myself out of a tyre valve, which is then just taped onto the end of this carb cleaner. All of the items around the injectors I've cleaned here with brake cleaner solvent, same with the rubber boots. So this is testing, giving everything a good clean, and then just to finish off, I'm just giving that a good squirt either side, a blast with some clean air. So between the two engines, I'm left with 11 injectors after destroying that last one that was stuck. And of course, the one out of the original engine, cylinder 6, which had the hole in the valve, exhaust valve, I was expecting that injector to perhaps not be working properly, causing that bank to run lean, but having cleaned and tested it, was just working fine. So a bit of a mystery there. Anyway, it's time to treat the remaining injectors to new seals from Porsche. Okay, it's engine ancillary assembly time. So I've got all my new gaskets there ready to go. I've began a bit over that side, and yeah, I've cleaned up all the inlet valves, nice and shiny, or as best as you can imagine it's possible to get without specialist blast equipment. So yeah, let's get this job done. Incidentally, you can see that stuck injector which was this side. If you compare the two, you can see that's got quite a bit of corrosion in there. I'm not sure if the torch highlights that, but yes, yeah, I think I've already mentioned it, but the story of this engine was it was retrieved from a breakers up in Scotland, off of off 991 Gen 1 GTS, on 46,000 miles up there. So I guess it's had a hard life with all that snow, ice and salt up there. So the new injectors here, I've got to slot them into the fuel rail here first, and then the whole lot should slot in nicely onto the heads. So here they are, all nicely rebuilt and cleaned. And the way to get these into the fuel rail ends, as it's such a tight fit, is pop them in there first using a bit of dielectric grease around these seals. So we'll just pop each one in that way. Also, I like to get a bit around the bottom boot here, where it's going to seal up against the slot in the head there. Okay, so I think I've got the right method here after fiddling with the other side, and let's get these springs in first, and then that lines the orientation of the injector up quite nicely, so its electrical connector is pointing in the correct direction. And it's just a case of wiggling these in, and there it goes. It should go quite nicely with a bit of that dielectric grease on it. Get the spring in the correct position. There we go. So that's one. Then we've got to push the rubber boot down into place. Hopefully with some of that additional dielectric grease, it might stop any corrosion in the future. what a relief to have got that injector out after all that. That's set me back about 4 or 5 days now, believe it or not. So yeah, absolute joy to get that out. But yeah, I was literally that close, having resigned myself to taking that head off to sort that. So yeah, it's a miracle I didn't end up going down that road. Okay. So next is the inlet manifold. This nice shiny new gaskets. I have cleaned the mating surfaces up. And of course I've actually cleaned all of the inlet manifolds up as well, using that solvent. I assume everybody's seen these Wobble bits. They're basically not quite square on the end, so it gives you a little angle here. So it's not quite a universal joint, but you know, you can put the most amazing torque on it, and yeah, it's quite forgiving at slight angles. It's perfect for little jobs like this. Speeding things up then, the remaining assembly of the engine. So I'm just putting the heat exchanger on with oil filter assembly there, with new seals of course. So that goes on as one complete unit. Then I've just putting the 12 volt, that's the 12 volt cables there for the alternator and starter motor, which join together and then go out the back of the engine. Now I am starting to line the engine wiring loom up along with all its attached vacuum hoses. So it's really important to get everything in the right order there and clip it all down in the correct places. Anything in the wrong place would just be a total nightmare, so I'm really going to take my time with that. Yeah, so I've just torqued the alternator down now, and so it's ready to start threading all of this through into the correct positions. Looking at, especially taking some time with those vacuum hoses as well, because they're quite complicated, and of course nothing is marked up there, and there's an awful lot of vacuum solenoids that need to be in the right place, and the pipes need to be in the right place as well on the top of that engine. So on goes the oil feeding T-pipe. One side of that goes the oil top up cover, and it tees off to the centre of the engine and to the cam, one of the heads, I believe. On goes the air compressor. You can see on the air compressor of pop plastic bags to seal the hoses on that. It's important to keep the atmosphere out of those
out that air compressor, because the lubricant and any gas left in there is all hygroscopic, so the last thing you want is that being exposed to the atmosphere. So now I've put the spark plugs in, and I've put the coil packs in, and now I'm connecting the engine lube to the coil packs, and then I'll be putting the covers on the coil packs there each side. So that's bank 1. Now starting on bank 2, doing the same thing. And yeah, really taking the time there to thread the wiring loom and vacuum pipes around the right way. That's the high pressure fuel pipe going on, being torqued down. Hoses for the oil cooler, and then I'm just looking at putting the induction system on there. The induction system is quite complicated and there's quite a lot of seals on there, so on go new seals, and then it's a case of assembling that induction assembly. And of course that induction assembly has several vacuum hoses attached to it through solenoids, so I've also got to wire and route those hoses correctly and get the hoses in the right place, attached to the right solenoid actuator. So on goes the rest of that, and then I'll be looking at putting a new seal on the throttle body and attaching the throttle body. That's the fan belt going on there, so I'm just taking the pressure off of the fan belt pulley and threading it round the right way. I've put a new damper on that fan belt. I think the old one was leaking, so I've got a new fan belt damper from Porsche. Yeah, there's the throttle body finally going on there, so yeah. And of course the remaining vacuum actuators for that inlet manifold, and then that's pretty much the engine nearly done, I think, from memory. So I've wheeled the engine out and brought the gearbox forwards there. Right now just fitting new lambda sensors, upstream lambda sensors to both sides. It's quite a cheap thing to do, and it's just precautionary really, because the previous engine appeared to have been running slightly lean. That's all I can imagine that could have caused that damage to that exhaust valve. But yeah, so I've just replaced the lambda sensors, and now I'm looking at making this gearbox, and there is a dowel that's stuck in the engine and the gearbox, both opposing each other, so one of them has to come out, and I need to use a bit of heat there. That's what I'm doing there, and some mole grips to get one of the corroded dowels out, and then once that's out, that's in a position where I can then line them up and start mating the gearbox. So I'm really going to take my time doing this. The last thing I want to do is get strain the input shaft in any way. That's just simply not going to be good for any of the seals or the input shaft. So take my time to get everything in the right place before putting the bolts through. Just a shout out for if anyone out there in the community thinks they can help. To actually repair this, the old engine, take it apart, I'm going to need a couple of specialist tools. In particular, a camshaft tool, timing tool, and a tool to put the gudgeon pins in and line the clips up. So if anyone can help with that, please let us know. Leave something in the comments or something. Yeah, I literally only need to borrow something for a couple of hours for a day. Trouble is, I mean, they're a couple of £1,000 from Porsche, so it doesn't seem to make much sense to buy them. But they are different from the 996s and 997s, and of course those tools are readily available out there in copies, even from Temu, for something ridiculous like £100, and lots of DIY people haven't. But this 991 Gen 1, no one's got them. Anyway, yeah, so leave a shout out for that, and I'd be really, really grateful for any help on that. So that's the attachment of the gearbox nearing the end, and from memory, I just then wheeled the whole assembly underneath the car and called it a day, ready to start the next day. But you've missed that bit, so you won't see that bit, but there's not a lot to see. The camera fell over in the wind. Good morning, it's another day here, and I'm blessed with some nice weather again. I've got fresh engine oil in the engine. I've cleaned the injectors. I've put new upstream oxygen sensors in. New oil filter, air filter, it's all good to go here. I've given all the ancillaries a clean here, like the airbox and the cross members and other bits and pieces that you could normally not get to very easily. I've lined the engine up and it's ready to go here. Let's take a look. So the plan is to just check it up a little bit higher as far as I can go, and then drop the car body onto it, connect it all up. I don't think I'll connect everything. I'll leave the cross member and whatever other bits and pieces and exhaust off, and just get the thing started, make sure it's running okay from that point. So here we go. So yeah, it's not really rocket science, but it's just really a case of really taking one's time, making sure everything lines up perfectly, so that as you drop down, everything's going to be in the right place. All the hoses and any electrical cables are all going to drop down into the right place. So that's all I'm doing here, just being very cautious, observing both sides each time I come down, making sure nothing's going to get trapped and then either end up broken or just in the wrong place. So there's various hoses, mostly for the heating. There's two hoses that go off to the heating, and there's your fuel hoses and the gearbox neutral selector cable. The gearbox has a wiring loom dropping down onto it from the cabin, separate to the engine compartment. So it's all got to come down in the right place. Yeah, from memory, and of course everything needs to be laying up so I can do the engine mounts up and gearbox mounts up nicely, which I've now done. So now I'm just taking my time to do all the cooling hoses up in, and the vacuum hoses in the engine bay there. From memory, I think the only issue I had was when I was connecting the gearbox wiring loom up, there seemed to be a plug going nowhere, and I do recall spending quite a long time scratching my head wondering where on earth it went. And it was only later on when I used the scan tool and it flashed up that there was something not connected to the gearbox that I knew for sure it had to be connected. So taking another look, it was just right underneath the gearbox, and you wouldn't have missed this thing if it was up on a ramp, but it was simply the angle I was looking at the gearbox. I hadn't really noticed there was the plug there. Anyway, all sorted. At this point I've not connected the drive shafts and there's no exhaust system connected. It's not been topped up with any coolant at all, but it's a moment of truth to see have I bought myself a Duff engine. Time for its first start. So that's an excellent sign. Now it's time to check for any leaks or anything untoward. Oh my god, an oil leak, petrol leak. The high pressure fuel line. Okay, I got to the bottom of this. That pressure, that pipe screws into the end of an insert
and that insert was broken, which is this here. It has a hairline crack on it. I don't know if the camera can pick that up. There it is. It's just there. Can you see that hairline crack there where the top of my thumb is? Incidentally, this is quite interesting actually. That insert there, which I hadn't realised. I've lost it now. Where is it? There. It has a little cleanable fuel filter that goes in here, so that's quite interesting. Didn't realise that. So I've taken the one out of the spare engine and popped it in there after giving it a good clean up.
So with the final checks out the way there, last run, it's time to finish the reassembly, putting the heat shields back on, followed by the wheels. I don't think you can see in this sped up bit though, when I come to do the wheels, the locking wheel nuts, the centre locks, I use some Castrol LM lube on them so before putting them on and then torquing them as best as I can in the air. A couple of people asked me about the axle stands in the last video. I actually had two on the back and, well, I had two jacks on the back and two axle stands on the front. Now on all four jacking points I used jacking point pads so that there was no metal to metal contact. The resting on the front axle stands, the rear would actually balance on a single jack, but I used two, so there was always one for redundancy, so it was quite safe. That certainly didn't want to come off the axle stands, did it? The problem was that when I checked it up I had 3 sets of jacks and I was only left with 2 because one of them developed a leak. Anyway, it's off. I don't know if anyone's ever looked at putting their GTS or centre lock wheels on, but yeah, it's just worth pointing out actually. It's just a case of having to torque these to an extraordinary amount, 600 Newton meters. The Porsche way to do it is to have it on a centre lift so all 4 wheels are off the ground, and then get somebody to sit in the driver's seat and stamp on the brakes and then torque it up that way. But I tend to torque it up as best as I can in the air, lower the car and then finish torquing it on the ground, and most people seem to do that, and I've never ever heard of anyone having any issues doing that. So I don't think it really makes any difference either here nor there, but 600 Newton meters it is, so you need a rather large torque tool to do that. So here we go. Let's just adjust it down. And there you have it. So that's just torquing it up to spec, then coming back an eighth of a turn, and then going back and torquing it to spec, spot on again, and then that's done. So with those final bits done, it's time to finish the last reassembly, which can be done with the car sat on the ground. Air filter box on, rear bumper on, and then the lights can go on and the wow tower. That's pretty much about it. What I neglected to actually film is, prior to just this point, I actually did a pressure test on the cooling system using my bleed kit, and just ran it up to 10 psi and left it for half hour, just make sure that nothing had leaked out, but it was fine, so that was good. I'm there, it's complete. and it's ready to start test driving now. So I'm going to give it a good test drive. I've filled it up with the Porsche recommended 0W40 mobile oil. That's this stuff here. And yeah, I know that this is probably a little bit anal, but I'm going to do 100 miles or so in that, and then I'm going to change the oil and filter again, just in case, because that engine has had God knows how long sitting on the shelf in the breaker's yard, subjected to God knows what environment, and it's been, you know, semi apart. It just seems the thing to do. Then I want to fill it with the improved oil that lots of the big engineers like LK Engineering, and I think even Hartec possibly, are recommending these days. It's this stuff up there called Driven DT40 5W40. Now that's been developed with a higher moly and zinc content over what you'd normally find in those Porsche approved oils, and apparently research has shown that that can help these alu seal and locker seal engines. It can help the oil bind to these cylinder walls a bit better. It's just allegedly better for these high performance race engines, so I'm going to be putting the car on that stuff from now on. What else? So I've bled the cooling system. That was a bit of an ordeal, and I had to invest money. Not a great deal, a couple of £100, but I had to buy a decent compressor from Amazon, and one with 35 litres in total of air storage, and a decent bleed kit. So let me just show you that just there. Yeah, so that was a bit of an ordeal. I went with the compressor at first, which is just 10 litres, and this bleed kit, and that wasn't quite enough to sort of establish the vacuum I needed. So I increased the size of the air tank by adding on that extra red one, so that took it to 35 litres. But then I was still having trouble, so then I bought yet another bleed kit that had a slightly different Venturi attachment here, and sort of playing around and fiddling, I ended up pinching that Venturi attachment and putting it on this one, and that seemed to provide the most powerful vacuum. And of course, before doing that, I made sure everything, absolutely, there was nothing left in there at all. You know, I made sure the front radiators have been drained by removing the hoses, put them all back, vacuumed it up as much as I could, make sure every single hose was crushed with the vacuum, even the ones at the front. Finally, that was enough to draw in, what, about 15 litres of coolant. Then I ran the bleed procedure on my scan tool, but that failed. So I let it all cool down, had a look in the expansion tank, and I was able to add another 2 litres once it was stone cold overnight. Ran it again, it finally passed. Let it cool stone cold again. It then took another litre and a half. I've lost count of how much fluid it's taken, but it's probably taken about 20 litres of coolant. So now it needs a good test drive. The internal heater's working. It's working on its bleed test, so it's good to go. Yeah, so happy days. Off into the sunset. Now then, just let me take a moment out of these videos and mention a couple of clubs in the UK. There's the Porsche Club of Great Britain. Now, some of their members, particularly on an online WhatsApp community that we've got going, have been absolutely quite helpful and suggested a couple of ingenious tips, which have been very helpful so far. And then also let me mention the independent Porsche group of Great Britain. You can find that online as TIPIC, and you can find Porsche Club of Great Britain online as the Porsche Club of Great Britain.
So do take a look at them, and you can join either of those clubs, and it's certainly worth joining one, the other, or even both, and being part of the community. I'll leave some links below to that. Okay, yes, had a good test drive, and I'm happy with where things are. So I'll be changing the oil soon, and then in a few weeks' time I'll be test driving it for real around Tuscany. So you're probably wondering how much this little project has come to. So let's take a look at this as I've written it down here. Let's take a look at a few figures, shall we? So the engine was £11,000, and I've spent £250 on gaskets. Other things like oil plugs and filters, it's £100, but actually I've spent a further £120 now on that DT40 oil as well, so that should be added to that, to be fair, and that's missing. Then we've got the other things like cleaning the engine and gearbox. I've spent £70 on cleaner to do that. I recharged the aircon, which cost me £80. I don't think I mentioned that actually. Just quickly before I completely forget, I've done it with this stuff here that you can pick up online or from Halfords to do yourself. It's quite easy and straightforward, but when I get round to having its next service book stamped by a Porsche dealer, I'll probably ask them to recharge that for me, drain and recharge it again. It's always good to have them do it because you get the lube and the they ensure there's absolutely no moisture in there, because any moisture in the aircon is just so bad for the system. So that's why it's always a good idea to, because it's hydroscopic apparently, that gas. Yeah, so what we got then, we got the coolant. Then of course a bit of money has had to go on specialist tools so far. My bleed kits come at £90. That air compressor with the extra tank, 155. 165 on jacks and trolleys. A gas torch with its gas and oxygen gas, which proved unnecessary, but I've got that forevermore now, 145. So there you are. So total spent to get this car back on the road, £12,145. Now, I was probably being quoted 15,000 plus, maybe 16,000 with extras, plus the labour for RPM Technic to do a Porsche engine swap, but of course they couldn't get the engine from Porsche any longer, no longer available for this particular 991 generation. And so they were talking about rebuilding it with a new bottom half block, and then we were probably looking at 25,000 easy there. So there's been some good savings there. And of course, I've now got this engine spare, which I'm going to now rebuild, and I shall be filming the endeavours to do that. And at the end of the day, I've got a perfectly a tip-top factory restored, well, a tip-top restored engine in A1 factory, as almost as, you know, as new, as refurbed engine, I suppose. As good as a factory refurbed engine. If I can get to that stage, then that engine on its own's worth at least 20,000. So that's certainly going to be worth doing, and I'll have a spare engine forevermore. Okay, thanks for watching. Catch up in the next episode when we start pulling that engine apart. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers for now.